Battlefield 5 has exploded on the Steam charts, hitting 114,000 within the last 24 hours and a concurrent of 13K. A lot of this is because of the recent Steam sale that saw the game drop to like $4. But looking at the other numbers from 2023 alone, it shows Battlefield 5 has had a healthy player base for a game that released in 2018. And this is just on Steam. Add in EA app numbers and then console numbers themselves, which console isn't crossplay like Battlefield 2042 is, then Battlefield 5 looks very alive in 2023. Compared to Battlefield 2042, the numbers aren't that far apart, though Battlefield 5 has a higher 24-hour peak. But you also have to imagine that the 21K gain for 2042 that it had in October and what it maintains right now is because of a sell and people who bought Battlefield 5 and wanted to try 2042. But what can EA and DICE learn from this rebirth in BF5? How does BF5 compare to 2042? Well, I installed the game on PC where I'll be playing with a fresh account because I've never played Battlefield 5 on PC, only played it on console. So not only will this be up-to-date gameplay, but it will also be a visual representation of what you can look for if you were playing the game for the first time. To start things off, I wasn't the biggest Battlefield 5 supporter when the game first released. In fact, I passed on it for the most part. I played it for a bit, here and there, and moved on because I thought the leveling process sucked and it wasn't a big mega fan at the time period. Yes, I'm not a fan of World War era, video games, which was also why I didn't spend as much time in Battlefield 1 as I do in every other Battlefield game. Anyways, Battlefield 5 as a game, ignore my dislike for the time setting, is the last real Battlefield game. And by that I mean it's the last Battlefield where the game felt like a traditional Battlefield experience. Classes being in a game. Yes, I know 2042 has had an update that added classes. Weapons being only available for certain classes, which 2042 has not made change on that. Varied level design, and most importantly, destruction. In 2042, destruction virtually doesn't exist, which is weird because map destruction is part of the DNA of Battlefield. From when the game's popularity took off until Battlefield 5, DICE always marketed the destruction and people were drawn to the game for it. It's what separated Battlefield from every other modern military shooter, that and the widespread warfare gameplay, land, sea, and air. 2042 lacks the sea part and destruction. What I noticed returning into Battlefield 5 was the movement felt different, more weighty to a degree. But what you would notice at first glance is the visuals of the game. The maps in BF5 are gorgeous, with a variety of colors. This is what maps should look like. Not the dull grays and browns and muddy looks of 2042's map. 2042 looks very metallic as well, not just when it comes to the grays and browns. And with that, 2042 maps don't look like they have real identity. They don't stick with you and aren't memorable, which is weird because every Battlefield game before 2042 has memorable maps that do stick with you. If you as a Battlefield fan, someone who's played as long as I have, played since Battlefield Bad Company 2, they can all name multiple maps from each Battlefield game that they just love. Not so much Battlefield 2042. Replaying through BF5 leaves you with this feeling, this thought of, what the fuck happened? How did DICE go from this to what 2042 is? And again, this isn't related to time setting, because Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 were modern era, and they were amazing games with destruction, unique maps, memorable maps as well, and felt like a true Battlefield game. Like, the atmosphere of these two games is so different. 2042 doesn't really have an atmosphere. Every Battlefield game before 2042 had a good map atmosphere, and that comes from map flow, map design, lighting. Hate to beat a dead horse here, but again, destruction does add to an atmosphere for a game. If I'm EA and DICE, and I'm seeing this resurgence in Battlefield 5, I'm making sure the next Battlefield game goes back to its roots, goes back to making destruction a major part of the game, goes back to having a well-designed maps. These maps are insane to look at BF5, but not so much in 2042. Again, to give you an example of another video game, think of Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite's biggest beef when it came to the player base was it didn't feel like a real Halo game. This is not how Halo was played. This is not how the Halo maps look. This is not how the UI for Halo looks. And a lot of these changes since the launch has been trying to get Infinite back to being what Halo players loved in previous games. You will see this in a lot of video games where player bases, the core player base for a video game, they want the game to stay the same when it comes to the to the game's DNA and not, trying to reinvent the wheel to be something that's not. To stop chasing trends and trying to be like a Fortnite, like an Apex, or like, what Warzone's doing or what Call of Duty's doing. There's a lot of people who play Call of Duty who hates all these skins. They don't want to play a modern war game that they, are trying to view it as a simulation, and there's Spawn running around, or Homelander, or, Black Noir and Starlight. Like, there's all these characters running around who aren't, it makes money for the studios, but it ruins the immersion for the players themselves, and in turn, they start to hate the game. Now, luckily, Battlefield has not had those kind of like crossovers, which Battlefield could benefit from crossovers. It's just, if they were going to do it, it would have to be crossovers that are like, on the same plane, like, other military shooters, like a Ghost Recon crossover if they want to do some with Ubisoft and things like that. But generally, let's get back on topic though when it comes to, Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 5 and 2042. And with all of this, I'm not trying to dunk on 2042. I've made a few positive videos about 2042. It is an above average video game. I'm like level 110 in the game, so clearly I enjoyed it enough to play it a lot. But it feels more like a Battlefield spinoff made by a different development studio than it feels like a real Battlefield experience made by DICE. It's like when People Can Fly made Gears of War Judgment. The good thing for Epic and Coalition at the time is Judgment can be written off as not a game developed by the Gears of War developers. And after that, they went back. You could say, okay, now Gears went back to its roots. We're the real Gears developers. Now People Can Fly. So we're going to take Gears to its roots and make the game better. And of course, Gears of War did get better at the Judgment. DICE doesn't have that excuse. 2042 is a DICE game, just like Battlefield 5, Battlefield 4, and Battlefield 3, Battlefield Bad Company 2, Bad Company, Battlefield 2, and 1942. These are all DICE games. DICE doesn't have the excuse of, hey, someone else made this game. It wasn't us. So the next game will be us. We'll make it better. In the end, DICE has to stop chasing Call of Duty, stop chasing trends, and just make Battlefield the way that Battlefield has always been. Don't reinvent the wheel. Every Battlefield game has been good or better until 2042. There was no reason to change things. And right now, the Steam charts, and I'm sure numbers for total player count and revenue is showing it will be a 5, that gamers always just wanted a traditional Battlefield game. And that's something that people should understand. That's something that DICE should understand, something that EA should understand. Like, the marketing teams probably make a lot of these decisions, but people just want to play Battlefield. They want to deal with the destruction. They want to deal with, snipers and deal with everything in between that. They want to deal with the land, sea, and air. A lot of people are getting to that mindset of they're getting tired of dealing with vehicles in Battlefield, and it's like, then you're playing the wrong game. If you hate the vehicles in Battlefield, you're playing the wrong game. Go play Call of Duty. But the thing is, people like the gameplay and the gunplay of Battlefield, so they want to stick here with Battlefield. And my advice to people who hate the vehicles is, you either you learn to deal with them, which there's a lot of ways to deal with vehicles in these games. You have anti-tank rockets, you have anti-air rockets, you have anti-air vehicles, you have tank mines. There's all these different ways to deal with it. Well, for me, coming into Battlefield when back coming 2, I was the same way. I hated the tanks. It's like, oh my god, I just keep dying to these vehicles over and over again. But I eventually, the more I play the game and the more I actually try to adapt to the game, because the key word there is adapting. You have to adapt to how you play a game. You can't just expect the game to be a certain way because you yourself aren't good enough. And I'm not trying to say get good, but you need to adapt. And that way of adapting, for me, as someone who's primarily like this video, is mostly just infantry gameplay. If not, it's like 90% infantry gameplay and like 5% me sitting as a turret for a tank. You have to learn how to deal with the tank. You take them out, you pop in and pop out with your rockets and things like that, or you make the call. You tell your teammates, hey, we got a tank over here, can someone come deal with it? And you make sure you have a good balance of like, all right, we got some assault guys, some engineering guys, deal with the vehicles. I'm a kind of player in Battlefield where I will sacrifice myself to take out vehicles. I'll run into a tank with C4 and just blow the fuck up and take myself out with it. I'll pull out freaking stingers and deal with the choppers. And that's also when it comes to your teammates as a whole. If infantry is getting pelted by vehicles, that means the people who aren't vehicles on the team aren't doing their job. Tankers have to take out tanks. If you're a pilot, you gotta be in the air to make sure that the enemy team's pilots aren't just reigning supreme over the team. Battlefield has a good ecosystem, a good sandbox. You can't have that good sandbox, good ecosystem, if the players themselves aren't playing the game the way it's meant to be played. So I think trying to have like an infantry only battlefield is just the opposite of playing Battlefield. And I know this little tangent at the end here doesn't really have anything to do with the overall like point of this video, which is pretty much Battlefield needs to return to its roots. The reason why Battlefield 5 is having this success, this resurgence, this rebirth is because it's a true Battlefield experience when 2042 isn't. And 2042 is not a bad game, but what it lacks in DNA from Battlefield is why people don't want to play the game. Like, yeah, outside of the fact that it had an awful launch, but an awful launch doesn't kill the game. We know that with Battlefield 4 had one of the worst launches in video game history, but it survived. Why? Because it was still a Battlefield game. It still had all that traditional Battlefield DNA that Battlefield's always been known for, and so people who love Battlefield just kept playing regardless. You kept playing regardless of how buggy the game was, how broken the game was. 2042 didn't have that leeway. The map's designs weren't good. You know, that's why they since then they've reworked every single like launch map in the game, and every new map is designed in a way that make that kind of feels similar to a Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4 map. So it's like DICE knows that, okay, map design was a huge failure. So the next game has to make sure it has what the DNA Battlefield is. Have that destruction, have the good map design, have that unique flow and that unique feel, have classes, and have class specific weapons. You know, that means snipers are only going to be used by recon. That means, you know, carbines and SMGs are only going to be used by engineers or medics if you want to go to like that degree. You know, ARs and semi-automatic rifles only for assault. You know, it's limiting, and some people might who aren't traditional Battlefield players might hate the fact that that's limiting, but that's Battlefield. That's how Battlefield has always been, and that's why people love the games, because it became strategy. You ask people about why they like R6 or Rainbow Six Siege, and they'll tell you they like the unique strategy that Rainbow Six is. You know, having to use your utility and, you know, knowledge of the maps to play the game. That was Battlefield too. Battlefield was on a massive scale, was a game where you had to have the right like setup. You couldn't just have a team of recons. You couldn't just have a team of assault or a team of support. You had to have a good balance. You had to have some people who are in the air. You had to have people who are in tanks. You had to have balance. And that balance starts with DICE designing the game the ways it should have been designed to begin with. With all that said, that's it for me. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Leave any thoughts you have in the comment section below. I've been your boy Anubis. Follow me on Twitch. Link to the app is below. I'm out of here. Deuces.